The interest of the people you are leading comes first.
What are some of the core principles that Army has taught you?
Nobody can do all the job themselves. So it's about working together as a team and getting the team as a team delivering something. I was a paratrooper there.
Do you have to fight over there also when you jump?
Paratrooping, is about delivering, troops generally behind enemy lines so that they can basically disrupt enemy communications and supply chains.
So why did you leave the Army job? And why did you join? I think first company was Intel, right?
Yes.
Yeah, why that change happened?
I would really like to sort of pursue a technical career outside the army, to follow my passion of technology.
Any advice you want to give for a young person who has just started their career?
The earlier you can identify what you are passionate about, the better off.
Cool. Thank you so much, Vijay, to be in my show. It's called Mindfulness with Manish. So before we get started, so it will be good for audience to know about yourself. I know I did a little bit research about you. You have been working in Google as a product manager, head of product actually, and then before that you were in Microsoft, and then engineering manager in Intel, and then you were in Army. From your words, how will you describe yourself? Just a quick introduction.
Well, I'm just a simple, person who had the opportunity to sort of tasted a lot of different things in my life. I've been fortunate that I've got the opportunity to serve in the Indian Army. I volunteered to join the Indian Army. I was a paratrooper there. Then I wanted to follow up with some more education. I did my master's in computer science. Then after, I've been fortunate enough to work at Intel, Microsoft, and Google. So, just enjoy doing different things, and I'm passionate about doing whatever I do. So.
Nice. What was the passion behind you joining Indian Army? Let's start from there. Why did you join Indian Army?
So we have a long history of army people in my family. So my father was in the army as well, and he had two other brothers who were in the army. So we had a lot of influence in the army while we were growing up. Obviously we were posted all over the place, and the army back when we were growing up in the 90s was a very respectable sort of job to join. There were lots of other opportunities outside for sure, but I was heavily influenced by my father all the the opportunity that I saw there, I don't think I ever regretted doing that. I really enjoyed my stint at the army. I sort of did all the things that I wanted to do as a part of the army, got some tremendous experiences, made amazing friends, and those bonds carry me even today.
Nice.
But yeah, it was really about sort of following my heart at that moment in time. I really wanted to be in the army at that point in time. Seeing my father, wanted to be an officer in the army, so that's what I did.
So tell me a little bit, when people join army, right? So there's two ways. One is just after plus 2, 12th.
Yeah.
I think CDS is exam NDA's exam, right?
Yeah.
And then you have SSB after, if you are doing undergrad somewhere, right?
Yeah.
So you did SSB.
Well, no, actually in my batch, and I think I was the last batch, we were allowed to join NDA after 11th grade. So I finished my 11th, I gave the entrance exam for NDA. Once you clear that exam, then they send you for an SSB interview. And then if you clear the SSB interview, they select 300 of you, and that's when you join the National Defense Academy.
So you did not do bachelor somewhere else?
No. So my bachelor's is in NDA.
Is in NDA. Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
I feel like people who do bachelor's as part of army, which is NDA, they are much more they're treated differently compared to people who come outside as.
I think I actually, Manish, I'm not so sure people inside the army are treated differently, because
you can disagree to me. You can say I disagree.
I think all of us are trained, to treat everyone well, and so I think the army has got some really amazing traditions. They sort of take people from very diverse backgrounds, put them into a hopper, and when we come out, we are all the same. We're equally well trained, equally passionate, and so I think it's a very amazing institution in the army.
And in the army, for example, if a person is going after engineering from somewhere else, like I did from Thapar, So I clear SSB. So I have a choice to either pursue engineering in army,
Yeah.
like being an engineer, computer
Yeah.
science or electronics,
Yeah.
whatever, or being like a front line
Yeah.
person,
Yeah.
like having guns and.
Yeah, yeah.
Is that an option, right?
Well, it is certainly when you get commissioned into the army, you get to make a choice about what arm you want to join, right? And so in in the Indian Military Academy, which is what you do after you join the NDA, you put in your choice for the arm, whether infantry or signals or armored corps or whatever it is.
It's your choice.
You put in the choice, and then they go through a massive process of where your rank is and things like that, and they basically award and give you one of the arms. They try and match you to the one that you volunteered for, but sometimes it's not possible.
I see. So you basically do the
Yeah.
priority one.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I ended up joining the Corps of Signals, which
Corps
is
of
sort of an engineering arm in the army, which is responsible for providing communication and software and computer support to the armed forces. And then after joining the Corps of Signals, and then I volunteered to become a paratrooper. So then I was a paratrooper as a Corps of Signals.
What is paratrooper?
So I used to jump from planes.
To do what?
So the parachute brigade based in it's one of the most unique institutions in the army in that you are the people who jump out of planes for an offensive operation, generally behind enemy lines. So I was a part of that organization. So I've got 37 jumps that I've done out of airplanes as well.
Wow. So from planes, okay, and like you can it's like skydiving.
Skydiving is done with square chutes where you have a lot more control over your parachute, where you can sort of maneuver left and right. So these are round canopy jumps, and you jump from a very low height, normally 800 to 1,000 feet.
I see, and skydiving is 13,000.
Yeah, it's much higher.
Okay,
Yeah,
so it's like lower height.
Yeah, lower height, and
You don't have parachute.
No, you do have a parachute.
Okay, you have
that parachute is a round canopy,
Hmm.
and so that's what basically helps you come down to the ground.
Have you done any active missions where you have like rescued people or being in the war?
No, I was not part of any of these missions. Obviously, as a part of the army, you train to be a part of these missions, but I was not a part of any mission.
Okay, got it. Okay. I think during that time, I think your tenure in the army was around 10 years, right?
Yeah, so yes, I was commissioned in 88 and I left the army in 98.
98. There was no war as far I remember.
There were 2 or 3 things that were going on at that point of time, and some of my course mates participated, and unfortunately we lost a few of us as well. There was the Indian peacekeeping force that was going on in Sri Lanka when we got commissioned. So there were a bunch of my course mates who actually went to Sri Lanka for that.
Actually, Rajiv Gandhi assassination.
That happened after that.
Yeah.
And then there was obviously, the Kashmir insurgency was going on quite a bit. And then in the east also there was an insurgency that was going on. So there was 3 areas where you could have been exposed to sort of operational experience.
So your background was not in engineering. It happened because you joined an army and in signals, right?
In signals. So once you join the signals, and once I went through my initial training and blah, 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 I eventually, because I was a signaler, they then send you to do an engineering degree within the army. They have institutions within the army where they award you an engineering degree actually from Jawaharlal Nehru University, which is based in Delhi. But you go through a 3-year engineering course. So all of us graduate from NDA with a bachelor's degree within 3 years. And then for those who join the technical arms, whether it's EME or engineers or signals, we do an engineering degree as well. So I did a bachelor's I have got 2 bachelors, a Bachelor of Science and then followed up with a Bachelor's of Electronics and Telecommunication Engineering.
Nice. So basically from your background, you're an engineer.
Yes.
Also, like talking about my passion, I also wanted to join army. So during my undergrad, I did from Thapar. Like army people used to come for equipment in 3rd year, right? So I was like, I want to become something like that because I saw red beacon cards and all.
Yeah.
That was my, like, okay, that's my lucrative thing. So I did SSB, cleared that. Like first time I was not able to clear. They actually judge the person from 3 angles, right? One is interview, how communicative, how good you are in communication, right? And they give you like good questions. Who do you love most? Your father or I still remember those questions, right? And stuff like that. And the second is like the group task, where they will give you a bucket or a stick, and you have to take it from point A to point B without touching the sand and all, with group of 10 people. So they see your leadership skill, right? And third is your mentor. Like it give you posters and photos. You have to frame stories from there. That's what I remember.
I think
it's very awesome interview, very good, and everything is free. They call you from everywhere in the world, like in India, and in a train or whatever, and they give you tickets and food is free, and you make awesome friends for 5 days, and you have to wake up at 4 a.m., 5 a.m., sleep early. If you get late, you have to take rounds and all for Subedar. It was an awesome time.
It's a very unique interview process, and I think it does a pretty good job of sort of identifying the right people for the job.
Yeah, and also I think our Indian Army is very strong compared to rest of the world, like compared to like a few other countries, like except few countries, because it's like third or second largest army, right? But some countries, every family is forced to join an army, like Israel, right? I would not say that is fortunate. I have a lot of Israel friends. But Indian Army, like we have, I think, a lot of population. So we have a selection process, which is very dense, right? They do not select everyone. I think that makes it very unique. So my question to you, next question is, what makes Indian Army unique?
Well, I'm not sure I'm qualified to sort of answer that question, but I think one of the things for sure that I can say is that, the general population in India, right, the general troops in India come from very simple backgrounds. But they are extremely motivated to do something right. Their dharma about doing something right. They carry that with them when they come into the army, right? And so in that sense, the Indian Army has been able to continue and inculcate this sense of responsibility to country. And they inculcate a sense of passion for what you're doing. They may not necessarily, back then, they may not have had the best equipment to go around with, but even with whatever resources we had, we maintained it well, we did our work well, and it was a unifying force that, it didn't matter where you came from, it was very non-biased. It maintained a very even keel regardless of what was going on in the geopolitical situation across the country. So in some sense, the people really make that country, and the Indian Army has had, and the Air Force and the Navy too, they've had a strong ethos of, responsibility to country, doing what's right, staying away from corruption and influence. So
Army is taken separate, right? They do not involve themselves in the politics and
everything. No, that's one of the good things that they remain all political, and that's been very helpful.
And in the other countries, like from Pakistan, for example, Pakistan, they always become political. Which is fine. We are not going in that discussion. Any interesting incidents happen when you were in the army, which you want to share?
Well, I think there could be many number of incidents, but
anything memorable?
Well, I think so. As a paratrooper, when you join the parachute brigade, it's a voluntary force again. So you join there, and you have to go through a probation for 28 days. And if you get selected, then you become a paratrooper. If not, you go back to your parent unit and you continue to serve there. So I volunteered to with the parachute brigade, and another course mate of mine, very dear friend of mine, Vikas, he also volunteered. So we both did our probation together. And there were a few other people who were doing probation together as well. And I think that period of 28 days, physically extremely demanding. I mean, you would be doing 50-kilometer marches or 2-mile marches or 10-mile marches, at a very frequent cadence, right? Physically extremely demanding. Mentally, you had to be really fit, because you would do all these physical activities in the morning, and then they would, make you really do these challenging mental tasks, whether it's writing a paper or sort of, making a presentation. So you were really sort of pushed both physically and mentally. But I think that was an amazing experience to have gone through, and the bonds that we built for the month of people who were, all of us were doing probation together.
Was good.
Yeah, it was really good. And with the last event of the probation is generally a 50-kilometer march where you've got like about 20 kgs on your back with your rifle. Wow. So we started about 2 or 3 in the morning. And I was, obviously that comes to the end of 28 days, so you've gone through a lot of physically enduring things, so endurance has built up. And it's not that I'm some extremely physically fit or something of that sort, but I was amazed what I was able to accomplish in terms of the amount of time I took to finish that 50 kilometers. And I think I owe it all to sort of, after a while you realize that it's got very little to do with your physical endurance. It actually has more to do with your mental endurance, right? And if you give up on the head, in the mind, you can give up physically too. But physically, we were way past our physical endurance capabilities. But we just continued, and so it was amazing to see. I was like pleasantly surprised to see how I was able to, pull that off.
Yeah, I've seen in some movies and all real stuff, right? So sometimes like they train your brain. Basically, in the training, it's not like one day they will tell you 50 kilometers you have to run. It's slowly, endurance and stamina building. That's what army is all about. But you have to, like, why they make you train a lot? Like, what is the reason behind that?
Well, I think, there is a saying which says the more you sweat in peace, the less you bleed in war. So training is the absolute essence, to make sure that you're always ready should the country need you to service
in any situation.
In any situation. So I think training is fundamental to the army. Otherwise, the kind of things that the army does, you don't fight a war hopefully every day, and so therefore, but you have to be ready for it.
Yeah.
And so that can only be done by training. So that's the core fundamental ethos of how you sort of train yourself, whether it's by, physical endurance or whether it's by mental exercises to make sure you understand strategy and military tactics and so on and so forth. So that's pretty impressive.
Nice. And you joined as a lieutenant, right?
I joined as a second lieutenant. I left as a major.
As a major, okay, nice. What are some of the core principles that Army has taught you?
I think one of the things that the Army teaches you is, whatever you do well. That's something that's really. The second thing it teaches you about responsibility, right? You take accountability for what you do. There is no question of palming it off to anybody else, right? And then it teaches you as a leader that your own interest comes in the end. The interest of the people you are leading comes first. Obviously, above that is the country that you're serving, but that is a given. But when you're a manager or a leader, when you're managing a set of people, their interest, their growth comes first always, and you are the last when you have to look after yourself. And so I've always tried to live and abide by those principles. So it's actually up there in Chetwood Hall when you graduate from IMA. These core principles of sort of how you think about leadership.
How to be a leader and all.
Yeah.
And you yourself has been an influential leader and also motivated speaker. So can I say all that learning that you had in army taught you all that skills, or what led, or your nature was like that when you were born?
Well, I think definitely the army, I've learned to be a much better human being, a much more responsible human being, and hopefully a good leader. Whatever I've learned, I think comes a lot from my army days. You really learn how to motivate people. You learn how to sacrifice your own interest for that of the team. Surprisingly, there's this term now that I read about called servant leadership. That term actually I felt was inherent to what we did in the army, right? People tend to think of army as a very top-down driven leadership model. You say it and people will do it. While that is true to some extent, but in all fairness, when you're out there in the field, all the rank and all just disappears and you're all in it together. And you really do something for the man in the trench next to you. And so that whole notion of sort of, responsibility and to the person next to you is something that the army sort of drills into all of us. And I feel it has held me in good stead. And I try and use those same principles when I've been in the corporate sector now for 20 plus years.
Yeah, let's talk about that. So we talked a lot about army. Now switching gears to corporate sector, what led to the change of the corporate sector? Why did you leave the army job, and why did you join? I think first company was Intel, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Why that change happened?
So I think obviously I did my stint in the army, but I was always passionate about technology. And so, when I'd spent, 4 years in training in the army plus 10 years of service, I sort of decided that, I would really like to sort of pursue a technical career outside the army, to follow my passion of technology, right? And so I left the army, I did my master's in computer science here in the US. And then I joined Intel and then Microsoft and then Google. But it was really following my heart and passion about technology.
It was passion about technology.
Yes.
Did Army tell you that, okay, you don't have to leave the job, we will fund your education, but come back to us?
You always have the opportunity to go do your masters there as well, but What I really wanted to do was, really be a part of the booming, technology
era.
industry that was going out, right?
That was
outside.
.com era also.
It was. I joined around the .com era, but what motivated me was actually even before the .com era had started. I was exposed to some of the things. I had taken a short trip to the US way back in '92, so I saw. I visited the Bay Area for about 6 hours, and I spoke to a few people. I was so intrigued by. I met somebody who worked for Oracle at that point of time. It was amazing to see all the things they were doing. I couldn't even understand all those technology words they were using. So I said, no, I really need to come back and do my, to sort of learn more about this space.
But isn't army technology more advanced than civilian technology?
I mean, in some aspects, for sure. But in some aspects, obviously,
there's a lot of research happening.
Yeah, there's lots of innovation that's happening. In
cutting edge. Yeah. And then you left army, you came to Intel, and Intel was the first job in US or was in India?
No, it was because I came here to do my master's.
Okay.
Yeah, so after my master's, I actually joined Intel here in the US.
Got it. And working for Intel as an engineering manager, and then Microsoft, and then right now Google.
Right.
What has basically what are some of the things that you have learned in terms of leadership style working in those companies?
So I think as sort of one has matured in sort of the corporate sector, you really learn that leadership is not about knowing the answer to all things. It's about making sure that you create the space and bring the best people together to let them do their best work, right? And that's been quite a rewarding exercise. As you see all people. I've had the good fortune to sort of hire people right from college. People who are early in their career, middle career, and even senior people. And across all of them, it's really wonderful to see how each one of them brings the best to the table. So creating that environment so that they can do their best work, making sure that the whole team is all rowing in the same direction, making sure that there are no silos, and creating sort of the general vision and direction under which the team can operate has been a very, very rewarding experience.
That is true, actually. So I'm a product manager myself. I joined product management in my first company, EMC, and then moved to my second company, which was a startup, Hyper. One thing which I learned, I never heard of this term called servant leader relationship, right? So this is something where basically I was like, okay, whatever I was in the perspective, I should know everything, and whatever I say, people should follow that. That was a mindset I was coming in. Then I learned servant leader later on when I read some books, and this is some mentorship I got, and that is something where I learned, okay, the leaders are where they facilitate. They should not know everything. They should basically listen to people. They should be good listener, good speaker, of course, but listening is also one of the hardest thing. People don't listen, right? That's what I learned in my career days. Right now, I handle my job quite decent, but I'm still learning. My question to you is, anyone in the young audience, what are some of the core leadership principles a person should learn in order to succeed in their leadership career?
Well, I think the first thing I will tell everybody is that while I agree that you don't need to be an expert in everything, I will encourage the people who are just starting their careers, become an expert in one thing, because having domain expertise is extremely valuable. And then later on you can take the principles of domain expertise that you've learned and then apply to other domains. But really understanding a domain really helps, right? Second, ultimately you realize that nobody can do all the job themselves. So it's about working together as a team and getting the team as a team delivering something, right? So learn how to work with people, right? Learn how to sort of establish these bonds which go beyond just saying, have you checked in the code and this is the feature, right? Build long-term lasting relationships with the people, and then you'll be able to do a lot of things together, right? Because when you go through periods of extreme stress, and it is during those extreme stress that you want those bonds to hold steady, because that is what will carry all of you together, right? So understand that this is a team sport. This is not an individual sport. It's a team sport. All of you have to do in this together. Third, I always encourage people is keep abreast, keep learning. The day you stop learning should be the day you die. You must learn almost every day of your life. You must come back in the evening and say, okay, I learned this. Even if it's a small thing, you must never lose your passion about learning, right? that will always keep you, whether it's technology, whether it's business, whether it's people skills, anything. Just always learn, right? The fourth thing I will say is, be honest to yourself, to the people around you, to the leaders up and below you. Just be honest. Always be transparent. Do not try and market to each other. Be absolutely transparent. Even when you're dealing with customers, customers have a very good way of sensing whether you're just bullshitting them or you're just marketing to them or you're genuinely doing something for their interest. So be genuine, be open, be transparent, be honest. There are very simple principles which most of us live, in our lives, but sometimes we get caught up in sort of, trying to, use fancy words and, things like that. But just be honest and transparent, and I found that, and keep the interest of like if you're talking to a customer, keep their interest at heart, right? Don't, just don't look at it from your perspective. Walk a mile in the other person's shoes. I think these few things, there are few simple things that if you hold and good together, I think.
And one follow-up question, right? How to have a good lasting relationship with someone? Is it like you should basically outside of work, you should take the person out to a restaurant or bar? That's how you should be doing?
I think those are material things, and I think they do matter, but I think ultimately, trust, is important. You should be able to trust the person, and you should be trustworthy partner to them. Honesty is an extremely important thing as well. You have to be honest and then expect honesty from the other partner. And then mutual respect, that's another important thing. And I think if you keep these three things in mind, I don't think you'll generally go wrong with your relationship.
Usually people learn these leadership styles or like advices as they move on in their career. Or maybe they do it in MBA classes and all. But these are life lessons. What taught you in your life to learn these? I think army is one of the biggest factor, right? Like these skills are coming from there, is it?
I would definitely credit my sort of stint in the army as having sort of inherently imbibed these things in me. But I think my parents also had a big role. They're role models in terms of they were very simple people, but they followed these principles to it. My father was a general in the army, but he was a very humble man. Right, and I saw him, and I've learned sort of, how in spite of all the sort of rank and elevation that he had reached, he was still very straight, steady, honest, and treated everybody with respect. And I would see how people would respond to that soft-spoken, respectful manner with which he operated, and I think that sort of helped. Had a very big sort of impact on me, and same is true for my mother. She's very passionate. But always does the right thing, always has the interest of the other people in heart. So I think your parents certainly have a lot of influence. And then, my wife, Yulia, she's had a big impression on me. We've been together for a while now, and, she's been, I learn from her every day. She, how we both support each other and respect each other. So that's very helpful as well.
Nice. Whenever you go to India, you still meet your friends, army friends?
Yes, in fact, a couple of years back, it was 2022, in December, my NDA course, we actually had our 35th anniversary of commissioning back in NDA itself. So in fact, one of my course mates was the commandant of NDA, and it was amazing. There were people who hadn't met since 1987 when we left NDA, and we were able to establish relationships in seconds. We were just like we were back in 87. It was the most amazing experience having to go back to NDA after 35 years. Very nice. It was an amazing experience.
I still remember, when I was in Thapar, I see the photos of people like get together, right? After 50 years, 35 years, the faces and everything changes. Now people are all old and all, but it's like a different experience to meet someone. That is true. Please have.
Please, thank you. Always.
So working for Google before Microsoft, is there any change in like the culture for these companies, or they all are the same, like in terms of leadership style and everything?
I think every company has their own culture. So nobody can say that all these companies are the same. They're big companies, extremely successful companies. But every company has its own
style,
way they do work, and how the culture of how they interact with each other and how they work with each other. So I've learned from every one of these. Every company has something that you can pick up from them.
Any advice you want to give for a young person who has just started their career in terms of they are in college and they want to pursue? I think one of the few things you mentioned was like domain knowledge, but anything else?
The other thing I would say is, the earlier you can identify what you are passionate about, the better off you are, and then follow your passion. There's some saying, I don't know the exact saying, which says, if you like what you do, you will not have to work a single day.
Single day, yeah.
Right? I don't know if I'm getting it right, but I don't know who
I
actually
get your
said
point.
this. But so that's been sort of the thing that I tell people. Find a thing that you're passionate about and then follow that.
Have you thought about joining army here?
No, I think I've had my stint in, and
Okay.
I really enjoy what I do. So I think,
Can you share a little bit about your like your personal life, about your kids, who are like how many kids you have, what they are doing in their career,
sure.
and how your army life and your leadership style has influenced your kids also?
Yeah, sure. So we have 4 children. One daughter is working for Boeing. She works out of Orange County. The other daughter is a doctor. She's working. She's doing a residency right now. A son, he has finished his civil engineering and he is working in Denver, Colorado. And then the youngest one is just going to University of Washington to become a marine biologist. So we have 4 of them, all of them in diverse fields, but all of them we are incredibly proud of.
And they all like their profession.
They all love their profession.
One of the thing which I have seen in the US is the kids here, they know what they really want and they pursue with that passion. In India, right, it's like bhed chal. It's like either engineering or doctor. I think things are changing right now,
Yeah.
but still it's the same thing,
Yeah.
because those are the 2 professions which pays the money. But
Yeah.
here they pursue their passion.
Yeah, and I think they do pursue their passion, but the other thing I will also say is that, and I did this as well, that it's fine if you join something and you're not extremely passionate about it. You can make a change. Like I joined the army. I served the army for 14 years, but then I decided that I want to pursue a career in tech, and I left and transitioned in my 30s. And so I created a
fine.
second career out of it. So I think that's the other thing, that you don't have to get fixated into a particular career, right? And so if you want to change, absolutely go make the change, and then you'll pick up there as well. So that's not a problem at all.
If you want to change one thing in your life in the past, what would that be?
I wish I could be a better father. I think one always hopes that you've done your best, but I would love to be
Spend more time?
spend more time with my kids.
I think that is one thing, right? I'm not a father, but I seen like after a certain time, I've been laid off from quite few companies now. So I feel like these companies, they for them we are just like a resource. Sometimes they call resource. Good companies call us employee, but some people call it. I don't like the word resource. So for them, if the revenue is down or sales are down, they kick us out, right?
Yeah.
So why we put our bread and butter, our blood and everything into that? I used to do that, but now I do balance.
Yeah.
Family is also important.
I think family is very important. I think it's certainly good to have passion for work, but I think it's really important to recognize that in the long term, your relationships with your spouse, with your children, that's what will really, really carry you through in the end. And I think that's something that not everybody learns that in different ways in their life, and so that's something I'd encourage all to sort of make sure that they keep that balance in mind.
Also, I've seen in the army family, especially my friends who are from army family, they travel a lot in India, especially, and also with that they develop that multilingual, as well as they have good leadership style. And they are more confident than regular other. Like I come from business family. I'm not saying I'm not confident. I am, but they are extreme. Everything they do is best. I don't know what happened, like what a bloodstream goes into their family, but I think it's a discipline or everything that goes in, right?
I think it could be multiple of factors, but I think it's always, I hesitate to generalize things like this, but I think, being in the army, because of the fact that you're going to move from place to place every 2 to 3 years, you inherently tend to get a little more flexible in sort of establishing friends and so on and so forth, right? But it comes with its own downsides as well, right? But I think ultimately what I encourage everybody to do is, you're all dealt with a set of cards when you get born. Make the best of it you can. Follow your passion, follow your heart. And I think eventually, you must find your own way in life, right? And that's something that I see a lot of young people do, and it's very, very nice to see, doing that. I mean, it's as you and I were talking, so nice to see that you're passionate about doing this for your audience, and like you teach yoga and all these things, which is you're following your passion. You're not just doing it because you have to earn some money. You're doing it because that's what your passion is. So it's I'm very happy to see that you're doing things.
Yeah,
like
people
this.
should pursue their passion, and that actually helps me to give more happiness and some pursue something which I really like, and that gives you more insight, more highlight. Okay, to live more, right? Otherwise, daily 9 to 5 job. Some people find it good, some people find it boring. For me, it's fine. I'm also techie, but it's not our baby. Our baby is something which we start. That's what I feel like. If we start a startup, I'm ready to work day and night. But that day has not come. I want to start a startup one day. Maybe this yoga thing can be one. But we'll see how that goes. So one more question I had was related to army. So paratrooping, when you mentioned, do you have to fight over there also when you jump?
No, I mean, in a real combat operation, yes, you'll have to fight. But this is really about, paratrooping, is about delivering, troops generally behind enemy lines, so that they can basically disrupt enemy communications and supply chains.
I see.
Right?
So not about fighting.
No, I mean, everything. I mean, ultimately, if it's a war, you're all going to be fighting.
So you're trained for that.
Right, you're trained for that. But paratrooping is a way to sort of deliver troops via the air behind enemy lines. So you can actually disrupt communications and then marry up with the ground force that comes from, so you can sort of, do that. So it's a highly strategic force that's used. There's some really good, films, and there's some really good examples of the paratrooping force being used really, really effectively. There's obviously the D-Day landings in Normandy, the airborne troops were used very effectively. So there's some really good examples. You can go take a look and see how they were done.
Sounds good. Also, one of your hobbies is to learn how to fly a plane, right?
Well, I want to learn, yes, for sure.
So in army, you must have an option to fly planes, right?
No, not in the army. Had I been an Air Force cadet, of course, I would have learned how to fly. But I was an Army cadet, so I didn't get a chance to.
Air Force also has planes, is it? No.
Well, Air Force.
Not Air Force. Army.
No. Well, it depends. Like I don't know. The Army has helicopters. I don't think they have. Indian Army has helicopters, and it's not really my area of expertise. I think they don't have fixed wing aircraft. Obviously, the Air Force flies fixed wing aircraft, just as the Navy does. I had some minor problem with my color perception in my eyes, so I would not have been able to fly. That's why I didn't go there.
But with smaller planes, you can fly here.
Yes, I'd love to. So I'm actually, in the middle of actually going through my ground school right now, so I can get my ground school done, and then once I clear the FAA exam, then I'd like to go learn how to fly a plane.
So, do you know the entire process to get a license here?
Well, I mean, I have a broad idea that, there are a couple of things. You have to first make sure that you clear ground school. So the ground school, there's a bunch of training that you have to go through, and then you have to give a FAA exam for being a pilot. Once you clear that exam, then you can, join a flight school, and then they will coach you and train you to be a pilot, right? It normally takes about 50 hours of flying, if you're lucky, to be able to get to a point where you can get a private license.
Got it.
And then, of course, and as a part of that training, you start off with an instructor in your seat, then ultimately you do your solo where you're flying alone, and then you have to do enough number of hours as a solo before you actually get your private license. And then, of course, you can augment it by instrument flying and so on and so forth. You can carry on from beyond that, but I don't have an interest in becoming a commercial pilot. I'm just interested in becoming a private pilot.
Yeah, commercial pilot is bigger plane and more training and all. That's a different level.
That's a different level.
That 2-3 years of training maybe.
I don't know how long it takes, but I know it's a very rigorous process, and I think age is not in my benefit. But I've got a nephew of mine actually who's just become a commercial pilot in India. So.
Okay. How much money does it cost to become a pilot here, like small planes?
That I do not know, because it will depend from place to place and the cost of flying a plane, renting a plane, because you have to rent a plane. So I don't know the exact number there. I'm sorry.
That's fine. Cool. So regarding, should we go into relationships?
Sure. Happy to talk.
Yeah. So can you tell me a little bit about what issues people are having in terms of relationship these days?
Well, again, like I said, these things are hard to generalize, but like I said, the fundamentals of every relationship should be based on respect, honesty and trust, right? And if you violate one of these principles, you generally end up having some trouble with your relationships, right? And I think what happens is that today there are a lot of distractions that come in your way. Whether it's spending time on Facebook or watching TikTok or watching reels, and these things take away a lot of time. And ultimately, you realize the bonds that you build by spending time with each other really hold you in good stead when the rough times come. So it's important to build relationships, to build those bonds, so that a little bit of wind or a little bit of tough times doesn't shake the foundation of your relationship.
And what are the core principles for a relation? One thing you mentioned is like
I think trust, honesty, and respect. I think
Okay.
these are the three
Main pillars.
absolutely inviolable principles in my mind.
Got it. And if you screw in these, then basically
Yeah, I mean, if you sort of if you don't sort of follow these principles, then generally you'll find yourself in a difficult spot with a relationship. It's sort of been my experience. That's the way I look at it.
And it basically it's the same principle that matters in professional life as well as personal life.
I think they
all the same.
absolutely all of them. Yeah.
Right, that makes sense. Also, I know you are 57. You just told me, but you don't look like 57.
Oh, thank you.
What has been the core like ways or things you have been doing in order to look younger, or things you have been eating, or like fitness schedule you are following?
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate you sort of complimenting on sort of my looks, but looking younger or so. But ultimately, obviously the army inculcates a sense of what it means to be physically fit. And obviously, I don't follow anywhere close to a rigorous regimen that I would follow if I were in the army. But I do like playing sports. So I've always played some sport or the other. Back when in the army, I used to ride a lot. I used to play squash, and I used to play team sports like soccer or volleyball or handball. And then over time, then earlier in the US, I played a lot of squash as well. Played a little bit of tennis, but now I play golf. I really enjoy playing that sport. And even if I can't play golf, I'd love to go for a walk, for long walks. I think I've been fortunate that I've been averaging over 10,000 steps for the last year plus or so.
Every day?
Yeah.
That's
my average.
awesome, man.
So I think that's good. And the other thing I would say is that, diet matters a lot. Avoid the sugars, avoid these sort of artificial foods, and I think you'll be okay.
Artificial foods, preservatives.
Yeah, sugars, avoid sugars,
Just basic things.
Yeah.
Nothing special you're doing.
No, I'm not doing anything.
No medicine.
No, I think to be fair, Yulia is an excellent cook, and she cooks very healthy as well. So we tend to have a lot of salads and things like that.
Julia sounds Mexican, is it?
No, actually, she is Yulia, and she's from Ukraine.
She's from Ukraine. Oh, nice. How did you meet your wife?
Actually, believe it or not, we met online. On Match.com. That's where we met.
Nice. How long ago?
5 years back.
5 years back. Nice.
6 years back. Sorry.
And now you guys are married.
Yes.
Nice. Have you been to Ukraine before
Yes,
the war?
I have been to Ukraine. Actually, we were in Ukraine just about a month before the war started. That was when
I also went to Ukraine before the war. And you went to Chernobyl?
No, I didn't go to Chernobyl, but I've been to Kiev, of course,
Kiev,
and then
yeah.
the hometown where Yulia comes from, which is a small town called Pervomaisk.
Okay. Ukraine is overall a nice country and very beautiful.
Beautiful. I really
But
enjoyed
right
it.
now it's all messed up what's happening. Yeah. Cool. Sounds good. So what is love according to you?
It's an interesting question. I think for me, I go back to love is about sort of an undying bond and trust that you have with somebody else. It can be with your son, believe it or not. It can be with your daughter, spouse. It can also be with your pet, right? But that feeling of being willing to give what it takes to be with that person, I think is really, really important for me. So love is it's an indescribable feeling that gives you joy because you're with that individual or talking to that individual. and you have that strong bonds and relationship with that individual.
Has the definition of love changed over time for you, or was that consistent?
I think as one learns from sort of the knocks that you get in life, I think for sure, I won't say that the definition of love has changed, but I think certainly sort of my appreciation of love has changed quite a bit. Yeah. I think it's fine.
Let's talk about travel.
Okay.
I know you also like traveling.
Yes.
Traveling is something which is near and dear to you. All RV people like traveling. What's your best traveling tourist place so far in the whole world, and why?
Well, I think that's going to be a hard place to pick, but if you force me to pick, I think I would say, we visited Greece, and I think Greece is a very, very nice place to visit.
Greece, okay.
I think the people are amazing, and the place is amazing. We visited actually an island called Crete in Greece.
Near Santorini, is it?
It's south of Santorini. Santorini is an island further up north, but this is south of that.
South of that, okay. I've never been to Greece. But so the beaches are good.
The beaches for sure. It's just it's generally a very nice place. The food is really amazing. The food is. We found these really this wonderful restaurant right up in the mountains in a village, and just amazing, exquisite food. Right. So that is one of the better places we visited. We recently visited Japan. That was amazing too. And then visited London a few times. I love that city. Very
Nice.
vibrant. And then India we visited. We went to Udaipur. We had a wonderful time in Udaipur as well.
Do you go to India often?
Yes, we go to India at least twice a year.
Twice a year. Okay, nice. With your kids or just you and your wife?
Well, I think kids, but we actually try and do a family get together between my cousins and nephews and nieces. So we did one very recently in August, where actually my son, the one who's in Denver, he was able to come as well. So we are about 45 of us who were able to get together in Mysore. That was amazing. Just meeting
Nice.
everybody.
Yeah, getting all kids together at one place might be difficult, right?
Yeah, this was not all the kids, but we were able to, obviously, as families grow, we are spread out all over the world. But this time we were able to get about 40 plus of us together in Mysore.
Wow.
So it was a very unique opportunity. We try and do this at least once every 2 years, and we've been quite successful to do this. But this is the one where we had the highest number of people who showed up. And again, it shows you the value of sort of family and the relationships that you build within the family.
Your kids are born here, right?
No, actually, none of our kids are born here. They're all born outside the US.
So they can speak Hindi?
Little bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they came here when they were young?
Yeah.
Okay. Is there any cultural difference my thinking is like the kids should be like Indian especially, they should be a little near to their roots so that they some principles like spirituality are inculcated in them. It's like wild west. That's what I think. You also think that, or?
Well, I think ultimately the fortunate thing that you recognize as you go through your travels in the world is that when you meet people from various cultures, all cultures ultimately are about respect and family and love and affection, right? And so I think it's a little unfortunate that we tend to generalize that certain cultures do this and other cultures don't do this. But when you speak to all of them, it's all about doing what's right by your children, making sure that the children have an opportunity. And and sure, there are differences in the microcultures that as we grow up, but I think I haven't really found any fundamental difference in what people
So growing up here in India, it's the same thing. Yeah, that is from your perspective.
Yes, and I wouldn't say it's the same thing, obviously, because what you get in India is different from here, and things like that. But I think in terms of the core principles of life, I don't think they're any different.
Okay.
Growing up here or not.
Also, regarding the books, do you read books?
Yeah, I do.
Any books you want to recommend for leadership, learning core principles and stuff?
Well, I think I don't remember anything off the top of my head, but there's some really good. There's a really good autobiography by Walter Isaacson about Steve Jobs. I think that's definitely worth worth reading. And then if you're a software engineer, there is this beautiful small book called Mythical Man Month. I think that's absolutely, it's not a leadership book, but it's worthwhile if you're a software engineer to sort of go through, the Mythical Man Month. book. I read, there's a history or a book about IBM, and the early 90s when they went through a transition. I think that's really worth reading as well. There's another book by Andy Grove, who was one of the CEOs of Intel. He's written a book called Only the Paranoid Survive. That is a book worthwhile absolutely reading as well.
It's about his story, how he started.
It's about sort of the principles that he followed and the way he managed Intel and things like that. So it's a very nice book.
One other thing is like I also like reading books, but the problem is time management, right? You have tons of things to do. You have full-time job, and then you have passion to pursue, and then you have cooking to do, and then you have kids to do. How do you get time to do all of that and then read books also?
Yeah, well, I think audiobooks is a good way to get by that. But I think reading is still something. I wish I could do much more of it now than I did before. But I think you have to take out time for this. I think when you instead of browsing through a bunch of videos at night, it's good idea
read books.
Read a little bit of books.
Yeah.
I think it sort of focuses your mind, and I think it helps you become much more expressive when you sort of writing your own words for something else. So I think reading is a very good exercise.
That is true. One important thing which I forgot to ask was in army when you were there, you mentioned training your mind is more important than body. It's all about mind. So having mind-body connection is important. We also learn that in yoga as well as everywhere. How do you train your mind?
That's a really interesting question. I think back in the army days, I don't think we did anything specially to train our minds. But what was overly impressed upon us always was that, look, like I'll give you when we became a paratrooper, right? They would push you to the limit where the body would just break, right? But they would still continue to push you even after that. Like I remember, when we did our 50-kilometer march, one would have thought that's the end of the day. I mean, you've done 50 kilometers with so much weight on your back. You should just go home and rest. We finished it. We had, I think, breakfast, and then they said, let's go play a game of basketball. And we said, man, that's nuts. How is this possible? But yet we played, and we were happy. In a sense, we survived even playing. So then you realize after a while that, and it just comes naturally after a while, you realize that, all these boundaries that you set are just in your mind, right? And once you apply yourself, you can sort of do anything after that, right? And so I think that kind of stuck with me. I think just sort of practicing this thing about sort of pushing past your physical limits as an example is something that I've sort of absorbed as a part.
That is true. And mind plays a very important factor. For example, getting up, like small habits, getting up in the morning.
Yeah.
Body says, okay, let's get up, but mind says, thoda aur so lete hain, right? Yeah. So same thing, studying, working and all.
Even simple things like, for example, in the army, they were very particular that regardless of how difficult the previous day was, when you get up and show yourself in front of your troops, you have to be clean shaven, looking prim and proper. And when you leave your room, you have to make sure that your bed is made. Now these are very minor things, they don't really mean anything, but over time you realize that when you see somebody in front of you who's like all ready, you don't have to wear some fancy clothes, but if you're all shaved and clean, like combed, and you're standing there, it inspires people to say, what, as difficult as the situation is, I think we can get out of this. And then I think there's a wonderful speech on YouTube. You should look it up. It's I think by one of the Marine Corps generals. He was a SEAL in the U.S. Navy, and he gave a graduation speech in some college. I don't remember which one, but look it up. And I think his name is Admiral McRaven, and he talks about when you get up in the morning, make your bed. You look it up under this word. It's an amazing speech. And he talks about how a simple act of making the bed is one of the best things you can do for yourself. Whether it is about the first task in the day was accomplished successfully, or it is about saying when you come back after a bad day, you got a well-made bed to come back to. An amazing, and it's a very simple thing. And I think these little things sort of help, change your outlook towards every little thing matters. Do whatever you do it well, even if it's cleaning the toilets, or even if it is wiping the table, or it is doing sort of this major presentation or strategy paper. Do all of it well, and I think you learn to appreciate that, and then you also learn to respect people who do good work like this. It doesn't matter what work they're doing.
Wow, that's why I bring those people, so I also learn new things, right? Because I read from Shah Rukh Khan video also. He also said that whatever you're doing in the world, whether it's small thing or big thing, just do 100% well in that. But that's the story of every successful person. Cool, man. Thank you so much. It was we can have like these kind of conversation going on forever and ever, but we can have another topic for another session.
Sure.
It was nice having you. But before we close the topic, any suggestion, anything, last closing topic you want to, any advice you want to give to the audience, anything?
I think I would just say, follow your passion in life, be true to yourself, and be true to the people you love.
Yeah, thank you so much. Have a
Thank
nice
you.
day, man.
Thank you so much, Manish. Really appreciate it.